Whoa there, kiddo! The following podcast may contain naughty words, spoilers, and scariest of all, opinions which you might not agree with. You still want to proceed? Well, you are a brave one, aren't you?
Welcome back to another episode of Ego Without Amigos. This time, we're covering the spring 2015 season of anime. You can follow along on ad chart, see what shows you may or may not like, see the images, the art, and see what you have a feel for and what you may want to watch. This is a show mostly for those of you who are undecided about what you want to watch this season, or kind of need some more clarity on what you thought you may be interested in or may not be interested in. Maybe you've already made up your mind on some shows and, you hope to find something new. Maybe nothing that you've watched so far appeals to you and you want to find something that really will. So this is just to help you out. Follow along and enjoy. First up, we'll be covering Danmachi, which is short for, I can't really say the Japanese name, so I'm just going to say the English one, which is it wrong to try to pick up girls in a dungeon? The show starts off with Belle, a beginner adventurer who's taken in as the sole member of goddess Hestia's familia, what we basically call a guild in the real world for, MMORPGs, which the world of the show is a stereotypical MMORPG fantasy setting. And the story seems just like that, with a third-person aspect removed. Our first look at Belle shows him being chased by a minotaur, to be saved only by a more skilled adventurer, Miss Ais Wallenstein, with whom he promptly becomes completely infatuated. Art style and character design are looking good, though some exaggerated qualities and movements are obviously intended for fan service, gotta attract viewers, gotta get all that money. Still, what do you expect from a comedy of its sort? I'm not too sure about it myself, but I'm expecting a harem, though readers of the light novels will be able to say more for sure. This is basically a show for comedic effect, but it may evolve into something better. Colors are well done, landscapes well designed for the town and other areas. Especially anything indoors, and the dungeon, though, they look really, really bland. They look super generic, just no details in any areas, they just seem like a texture added to the background. The Loki familia, especially Bete, seems like a good set of characters for further development, though obviously this remains to be seen. From what I've watched so far, it doesn't really seem like they can cover all of them, but who knows. The relationship between Belle and Hestia, meanwhile, is definitely worth looking at more in depth, and viewers may see something evolve from it, though maybe not in the detail that they would like. Since this is directed mostly at fan servicey kind of things, you may see it done in that direction, or you may not see it in that direction. It depends on what you prefer. Belle himself professes pretty good motivation and drive, and I expect we'll see some good character development from him. But, that's to be seen. He's just a beginner right now. Overall, this show seems fun and easy to watch. I would recommend it. But some people have been turned off by the fan service aspect. So be careful. Enjoy what you enjoy and watch it if you want. Moving on, let's cover Reikon. The show centers around Amami Hibiki, a girl with a sixth sense who's just trying to adapt to her new school. Basic concept, can't really go too wrong there, but that's obviously, it remains to be seen. First thing to note is that the main character's voice is super annoying and unnecessarily inflated, quite like I did with that last sentence. Character design is on point though, and these backgrounds are absolutely stunning. The detail and texture put into such short glimpses of the surroundings is awe-inspiring, really. The amount of time it must have taken to do such, brief glances of the surroundings, that's impressive. and I really appreciate when shows put in that much effort. One thing to note about the girls with hair over their eyes is just that, well, the hair is over half their faces, but their eyes actually seem to be resting on top of their hair. So it's a strange design choice and one that may take some getting used to. The opening song isn't something I'll be listening to when I watch the show, since generic, high-pitched, happy-go-lucky voices singing over repeated chords isn't exactly my thing. The chorus especially is particularly cringeworthy, and God, no, just cannot bear that. Secondary character introductions are wholly lacking, and boring commentary from their end is, well, boring. And the interactions between Amami and her classmates seems like common comedic hijinks, and that may be the point, but they have to go a little bit further in order to, actually develop the characters and make this show seem a little bit more interesting. Her foil in Inoue Narumi is establishing itself nicely, though I don't understand why Inoue needs to be such a tsundere in order to fit into that mold. It's a strong indicator, among other things, like facial expressions, of trying to fit the mold of common anime tropes. And I don't know why that's necessary. One thing I found especially strange was the jovial and flippant tone that the show takes with its bread and butter, so to speak. It trivializes the supernatural, and by doing so mocks the real. When the spirits of children appear, the first thing is it comes off as serious, but then lighthearted music begins to play and their deaths are almost neglected. Instead, kind of uses a jumping off point for the relationship between Amami and Inoue. It's a good transition, but an awkward one in a broader context. The ending theme is just as bad as the opening. No further comment. Not sure if I'll be continuing the show, but might be worth giving another chance after a very shaky start. Let's move on to Owari no Seraph, or Seraph of the End. This show starts off with a virus targeting humans that unleashes itself, killing all members of the human population above the age of 13, basically cutting off reproductive members of the population. Yuichiro is a member of the Hyakuya orphanage, or family as they call themselves, and they find themselves captured and taken by vampires who harvest them for their blood. The first impression I have is that the art style and animation is strongly reminiscent of Akira, as well as Yu-Gi-Oh! That's one I definitely thought of. I really appreciate the lack of a weak and submissive main protagonist in the show, which is a little unfortunate that I have to express gratitude for something shows shouldn't usually have to begin with. I mean, you don't need weak protagonists, guys. Moving on, the setup for Yuichiro's backstory and introduction into the orphanage covers a great deal of emotional ground, and I wonder if we'll learn more about his past, but ultimately it's his relationship with Michaela which will help to define him as the series progresses. The mentality of the rest of the children in the family from the orphanage is also heartwarming in the face of such a grave threat looming over them, and to see them all come together for meals helps to build on their relationships. The show really has a strong sense of narrative so far, and I hope it continues this way. With the introduction of a larger narrative of kicking vampire butt, it seems like we have a long and very difficult road ahead for the orphans and their fellow humans. It's definitely a task that they'll have to contend with for a long time, because the odds are completely against them. The music in the show is spectacularly orchestrated. It matches the scenes to a cue. Really. I mean, I enjoyed seeing a show pull off music so well in such heated scenes. It definitely reminded me of, John Williams' take on Star Wars and his successes with that. It really meshed with the whole animation style and atmosphere of the show. Ultimately, the first episode ends with an older Yuichiro, one who can use his past to wholeheartedly fight back against the vampires. And you'll hear no complaints from me about this first episode, and I definitely look forward to watching the rest of the series. So I hope you're watching with me. Next up, we have Arslan Senki, the heroic legend of Arslan, a show about a Prince Arslan of Pars who is son to the king Andragoras, and they're currently at war with the people of Lusitania, who follow the cult of Yaldabaoth, or something like that. The setting, it seems to be coming from a fictional Persia-like setting, with a lot of elements matching the story of Amir Aslan, told by Nasiruddin Shah's royal storyteller Nakib al-Mamalik. I just got all this information from Wikipedia. The animation at the beginning is intended to impress, but it seems rather boring, and much like what we've seen before in shows like Shingeki no Bahamut and Vanitas, it may just be copying off the success of those shows. And then the show begins. The character designs are really iffy at best, and none of them seem like they have been thought about too much or too intensely. Like not too much time was devoted to making these characters, I don't think. And suddenly we see a display of some of the worst animation I have seen in a long time. There's one scene where the guards are running down the street and they're copy-pasted, and it's just made so one of their speeds is a little bit faster than the other, so that it kind of looks like, they're actually real people, but it's completely just laugh-worthy. Their movements are just laughably bad. Like, think Star Wars Jedi Knight 2 tier bad. That game, by the way, does not, hasn't stood the test of time. Anyway, this show is not all that bad, despite what its surface may occasionally appear to be. There's a strong intent on displaying cultural and racial tensions, especially arising from economic disparities and religious disputes. The focus on the war between Lusitania and Paris is the means of addressing these issues, particularly the issue of slavery, and these conversations, however, may be a little bit forced as the show kind of shoehorns them in. Generally, this leads to hammy talk about equality and royalty, and it's usually, iffy, but I found it particularly powerful in showing the relationship between the king and the queen. Their kind of like hammy, awkward, and abrupt conversation is exactly what was intended, and perfectly captures the tension that was involved in that scene. That was a very small scene and maybe inconsequential to the rest of the show, but I really like that, though there are only a few scenes in few genres that can be pulled off using this like terse, very structured dialogue. The music is solid. It's not exceptional, but it's solid. The ending theme, though, is downright catchy. And the accompanying artwork is really well done. So I look forward to the next episode, but I hope dearly that is an improvement over the first. Moving on to Triage X. This show is about the organization Black Label, a group of nurses who spend the rest of their time excising the diseases and tumors of society by any means necessary. Though anatomically incorrect to a comical degree, the show deserves the praise of being well designed and smoothly animated. The first scene shows the squad of nurses performing an operation in which they infiltrate a criminal's house and perform an execution-style murder. The music is really fitting, the characters' voices are all appropriate, the dialogue already piques my interest, and the OP starts. The music is pretty good, not particularly catchy, but makes me happy to see that a show is pulling something off right from the get-go. At least the visuals during the OP are super well done. They're excellent. They make me look forward to the visuals of the rest of the show. There seems to be a lot of gun and machinery porn resembling something otherwise mostly seen in mecha. That's not surprising considering the studio that made this show has done shows like Zoids in the past. So, if you're into that, and if you like the look of that kind of CGI, you may be into it. The organization of Black Label itself is interesting to say the least, though I hope it develops into something beyond just execution-style murder, and maybe has a few complications within its ranks over time. The main character or characters may allow for some good growth there, and I'm fairly surprised to see that they're both high school students, though that may or may not be a bad thing for the show's overall plot. The presence of an antagonizing organization also bodes well for general plot structure, so we'll really have to see. Something I really appreciate in the show is the depiction of its violence towards women and the strong negative connotation that it's given. Abuse towards women is portrayed as evil and villainous, while Black Label has a lot of powerful women in its ranks. I mean, you're given a really strong dynamic to perpetuate the view of the abuse towards women being bad. At the same time, the show does objectify women to a degree, so take it with a pinch of salt. But know that overall, it respects the females that are in the show. The show, it really impresses me. The protagonist's backstory, his motivations, his conflicts, the setup between Black Label and the antagonizing party, the room for real development was a lot more than I expected. And the music and action were top notch. The serious nature of the show was something that came out of the blue. The CGI rendering of guns and motorcycles makes for good visuals. The character design, laughable in some instances, is pretty superb overall. And I look forward to the rest of the show. This is one of my top shows for the season. Next up, we have Kekai Sensen, or Blood Blockade Battlefront. Leonardo Watch is a normal guy living in Manhattan and New York City 3 years after an incident which separates the island from its original location and introduces it into a strange midway between this world and the world of non-human sentient creatures. The intro to the show, though it gives a few details, is very well executed, set up to giving the viewers a feel for the setting. The main character's exposition and the music that accompanies it is compelling and fitting. The character designs, ranging from the main character to the obscure passerby, are all interesting and well done, whether human or not. You can see a lot of inspiration. You can see where it takes its inspiration from. The animation, particularly in the sequence where we look across the street, you'll notice it right away in the first episode, is awesome. Definitely not something you see often. All the voice actors are perfectly suited to their would-be roles, and they all possess a definite talent that I hope will be exercised more. One voice of note is that of Fempt, whose playful and constantly changing tone is done really well, almost perfectly, in my opinion. Though the backstory for the protagonist is a little confusing and disjointed, the point remains that this is someone who is capable of change, which is a positive. I like to see characters who are capable of doing something for themselves. Meanwhile, the music is superb throughout. It combines strong elements of jazz and enough to funk to make you dance your ass off. The transitions aren't all that smooth for the music, but at least the music itself is smooth. The first episode leaves me a little confused and irritated by my confusion, but happy to keep watching. If nothing more, the show will be fun to watch. You can tell where the show draws its inspirations from, and all those sources are great, so I look forward to at least something. All the non-human designs remind me of both Digimon and Star Wars. The human designs are obviously inspired by shows like Trigun, Digimon, and Cowboy Bebop, and the musical and artistic inspiration from Baccano and Cowboy Bebop all definitely indicate a fun show. I'm looking forward to it, and I'm not going to take it too seriously, so maybe it'll work out. It should be fun to watch. You guys should check it out too. Next up is Shokugeki no Soma, or Food Wars. In this show, Shoma is a cook in training at his father's restaurant, and he hopes to learn how to cook professionally when he leaves middle school. There's not really all that much to be said about the show, judging from its first episode alone, But the character designs are alright. I think one character design that definitely stood out for me, though, was the father's. He looked excellent, and he was like kind of like a macho man kind of guy. But obviously, aged, matured. The animation itself is really well done in the small sequences, and it's used appropriately for the preparation and presentation of dishes, which seems like the show's focus, so it works perfectly. Soma seems really strangely characterized. It's as if he's kind of a chef version of Naruto. Of course, implying that Naruto's character is consistent is a mistake as well. But, Soma really reminds me of Naruto. Overall, the show is really fun to watch, but it leaves you utterly confused because of the graphic nature of people's reactions to food. And the sexual metaphors and euphemisms are bearable, but overwhelming nudity and sexual exposure is downright absurd and hilarious. I will definitely be watching more of the show to see Soma progress through the top culinary school in Japan, and it's definitely worth considering. I don't have much more to say about the show. Next up, we're going to be talking about Punchline. It's a show about Yuri Iridatsu, a guy who gets super excited when he sees a pair of panties. The premise is absurd and wholly unappealing to so many viewers. But for those of you who are accustomed to, or even excited by these kinds of shows, it's great. The opening sequence is a bus hijacking at gunpoint by armed thugs who are defeated by the mysterious superhero Strange Juice. She's a girl dressed in brightly colored clothing and just carries some kind of magical staff or something. Iridatsu is a passenger on the bus who finds himself amidst a chaotic rescue mission of sorts. At one point, he sees a fellow passenger's panties and becomes supercharged with energy, going so far as to push the secret mastermind of the attack out of the bus with him into the water. He is rescued by Strange Juice, but a sudden gust of wind reveals her panties, of course. He becomes overexcited and a blast of light shoots out. He wakes up as a spirit whose body has been possessed by someone else, with his cat guide telling him he needs to find a book in the house that he stays that will allow him to regain his body. And as he makes his way throughout the house, he must not get too excited seeing panties, or else the whole world will end. But good thing is he can turn back time. Really, I can't explain much past the plot at this point because there's no real substance otherwise. I mean, if you can even call the plot substance. The music is alright, the animation is goofy and fun enough to watch. The show is ridiculously colorful, and the concept is downright crazy. It's an interesting art style mix-up of Fooly Cooly and generic magical girl animes. But, if you like that kind of thing, go ahead. The voice actors are all very childlike despite the adult content of the show. It's a weird combination of things. It's definitely a funny watch, though the whole thing may get nauseatingly painful really quickly. Moving on to Mikagura Gakuen Kumikyoku, or Mikagura School Suite. Erina is a lazy girl obsessed with other cute girls who has to join a high school soon, so on her cousin's recommendation, she tries to place into the high school he goes to. She gets in, but find out that she has to join a club, and club battles occur regularly and are ranked in order to decide which club gets the best housing and food situation. I had to really force myself through even this first episode because it's not exactly fun to watch. The main character is just really annoying. One moment she's full of spunk and pep, and the next moment she's really depressed and dragging everything else around her down. Her voice is suited to her personality as well and doesn't contribute anything past the characterization. Her short daydreams of romantic lesbian interactions are funny, but they get repetitive and don't really add much to, well, anything. Her actual interactions with others are plain aggravating. They're the actions of a fanatical teenage girl who has no conception of inhibitions and self-control or self-regulation. Yet for some reason, she is increasingly singled out as special by others. You see little of other characters beside her teacher, who's a flying cat who speaks in a terrible voice with an unnecessary Ryui or something. Ryui, or I hate it. Added to the end of every single sentence. It's cringeworthy. Ew. The premise of the show is terribly staged as well, because the teacher is blatantly telling her that if she does not join a club, she has no room, and she must sleep in a sleeping bag in the hall. The cat teacher just goes around following her and telling her all these things that she can't have just because she's not at a club. The music's fine. It's nothing spectacular. The animation is moderately well done during the action sequences, though really lacking elsewhere. Where the show really shines is character design. Every character that you see has a very strong personality right as you see them because their appearance gives it away. Besides cat teacher, his design is just shit. This is kind of balanced out by the fact that literally zero background characters have any sort of distinguishing features, and they're even left uncolored. Ultimately, my judgment on the show, I pretty much tell at this point. I don't plan on watching another minute. God. Meanwhile, we have another show about a high school with magical people or anything in it, and it's called Yamada-kun to Seven no Majo, or Yamada-kun and the Seven Witches. Yamada Ryu is a violent delinquent who is failing out of his classes. His polar opposite is Shiraishi Urara, a well-behaved honor student. One day, they end up switching bodies inexplicably. The music for the first scene is perfect. Nothing could be better. The scene then leads well into the premise of the show and smoothly into the chill and entertaining OP. I'm really digging it just from the start. The character designs are decent enough. The protagonist looks cool as a guy, but clearly an outcast. Shiraishi looks cute, but somewhat unique and observed. So, well done. There's not much room for improvement there. Because their depictions really match their personalities really well. The use of lighting in the show is done emphatically at the right moments, though it may be a little bit overdone at those, and it conveys a strong sense of twilight and magic. So, it fits. Going back to the music, it's intensely focused on the pivotal scenes, though it fits very appropriately with them. Really, I think the show's focus is on the very high emotion and high tension climactic scenes, and so they put all the emphasis on that. But at least the rest of it is worked out fine as well. Comedy's on point and it's executed perfectly. Overall, the show has the perfect tools to pull off its hilarious premise, and it seems en route to do just that. This will be something I look forward to every week, and I can tell that you probably will too. The ED's alright. It's way too cutesy for me. I mean, there's not much more to say on the show right now, because that's all you see from it. I hope you'll enjoy it, because I definitely enjoyed it. So, let me know. Alright, next up we have Hibike Euphonium, or Sound Euphonium. This is a really short review because I watched this without getting the chance to gather all my thoughts on it right away. So, bear with me. The show is super cute, and it's obviously really high budget animation, as you can expect from KyoAni. And it's downright beautiful, really. The characters are cute, some overly so. This can be resolved in time, though. They're somewhat annoying to be exposed to so consistently, but it may just take getting used to. The usage of tropes is also a little bit awkward and annoying, but that can be overlooked as well. So what I'm saying at this point is, there are some things in the show that are done to an extreme, but that's not hard to ignore. So far, my favorite character is definitely not the protagonist or either of her initial friends, but it is Asuka Tanaka, the practical joker in the music club. Music is such an emphasis in this show, and it's sheerly brilliant. Obviously, it's gonna have to be. I'm not surprised that the soundtrack has so much dedication put into it. Overall, the show has great promise, but it will take some time to deliver because of how overly ambitious it is in the beginning. Last show I'm going to be covering is Ore Monogatari. Takeo is a big guy who is starting at high school with his best friend Sunakawa. Sunakawa is the ideal hottie, and he's been crushed on by every girl around him, while Takeo is the exact opposite. One day the two of them meet a girl who behaves a little bit differently. To start off the show, a good opening segment describing the ogre who wishes to befriend humans leads to a catchy OP, and it's something to grab you right off, sentimentally, right off the bat, may be just what the show wants to present you with. You can see where the show wants to go and the direction it'll take, and it wants you to feel emotionally something just from the start and as it develops. The narrative starts under Takeo's perspective, and it really does help to build a background for him and Tsunokawa, and pretty expertly so. The first person exposition combined with the voicing and background music, it's all really compelling, and you see the variety of emotions in Takeo, which is a real surprise, since sometimes such things are left unsaid, undiscussed in many forms of media, let alone just anime. Though anime may be a big area where that has been neglected for a long time. The common obsessive dedication to others is often seen, but this is a far more naive and honestly realistic portrayal of emotion, and you can see how Takeo's past has shaped how he reacts towards such feelings, and it really helps to evolve the show in a way that a lot of shows can't do because of how poorly they handle emotional depth. Meanwhile, the vibrant and stunning artwork and soundtrack really bring the whole story to life, even in just the first episode, and I'm really impressed. I look forward to the rest and hope it continues to be as entrancing. And really, there's no second way of putting it. You should be looking forward to this show. No comment on the ED one way or the other, it's just not my thing. So that's our look at the first episodes of each of these shows for the spring 2015 season. I obviously didn't cover all of them because these were the ones I watched, and this was quite a bit. I didn't watch Grisaya no Meikyu, which is a special that leads up to Grisaya no Rakuen, and I won't really comment on that. We can probably discuss it as a group later, since we're all into that show. That about sums it up. If you have any questions, let me know. And as always, subscribe to us on YouTube, check out our other videos, follow us on Facebook, on Twitter, on Tumblr, on all of the other various things we have. Check out our Mal accounts, whatever you want to do. Let us know if there's a show that you want to check out for this season but don't want to do it yourself, for whatever reason. If you want to see us react to an episode or something. We did, watch an episode recently altogether of some shows, so you may suggest a show that we haven't seen or that we didn't bother to look at to have us watch the first episode together. We can have our reactions to that if you like. Really, that's all for this one, so see you guys later. Enjoy.